We have Amy on the phone.
I'm here.
We can start with introductions. Tim Steele, Assembly.
Dick Training Assembly.
Mike Abbott, City Manager.
Mark Johnston, Municipal Light and Power.
Eugene Ori, MLMP.
Terrence Pearson, MLMP.
You can come up if you want.
Come and join us.
And,
Rose Foley, budget analyst.
all right, good. And we're here to look at the two items on the agenda, the Plant 2A update and a little something I suspect on Beluga River. Anyway, MLP, it's your ballpark. Go for it.
So we're going to give you sort of a quick rundown on the status of the Plant 2A project. We're also going to brief you on recent development related to our relationship with our general contractor. That will constitute the Plant 2A presentation. And then we don't really have a presentation for you on the BRU acquisition, but we want to make sure we can give you a little bit of a status update on sort of what the next steps are, and then answer any questions that you guys have about that that process as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Eugene to run you through this, the status report, and then Mark will sort of brief you on the recent development.
And I just want to make sure, Amy, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry, I had to take it off mute. I can hear you.
Okay. I will let Eugene go over the report and then I will talk about the issue with our contractor.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Assembly members. Before you is our report for the Assembly Oversight Committee. What our format has not changed. The project background, the terms of the contract have not changed. The safety stats have been updated for end of year 2015, and they continue to be a high point of the project, less than a half of Alaska national averages. It's a very good thing. However, as things ramp up for startup and bringing energy to site, we want to keep track of this closely, make sure things continue with this trend. I would like to make note that yesterday afternoon we brought first electricity to the site, backfeeding from MLMP successfully, working with the contractor and our own linemen to heat up the first electrical bus. So it's a scary time when you first energize systems, but we'll be keeping track of safety closely here. Work in progress is vast and wide. There's a ton of parallel activities going on, from high pressure piping, low pressure piping within the plant, the pump house outfitting, the gas compressor building outfitting. That gas compressor building is, all outbuildings are enclosed at this point, except for the guard shack, which will be built at the very end. And in the high voltage electrical building, we are now pulling electrical cables, high voltage 115,000 volt cables between the power plant and the electrical building, which will attach to MLMP switchyard.
Excuse me just a minute, Eugene. I want to, for the record, Jeff Johnson has joined us. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
There continues to be underground winter construction, which is a expensive way to construct, thawing of the ground, digging, keeping it tented, which is indicative of activities that are one would think the contractor would like to have done those in summer months, but they have to work those now as schedule is pushing to June, getting close to June. Inside there is, I think, almost 100 electricians working. There are a total of 300 men and women working the site, 250 or so during the day and just over 50 at night. So amongst all that, we're starting to introduce energy into piping and electrical systems. So things are heating up, if you will, on site, but moving at a rapid pace because the next section schedule remains the contract remains June 12th, 2016. We have every month and recently reiterated to the contractor, are they going to make it, which they have reiterated that they are. So now this isn't exactly what we hang our hat on. We track a master schedule that they've published and a 3-week look-ahead schedule. And the activities to get to that utility grade power in June of 16, all these activities have to finish. And a large portion of them are moving to the right each week. So when the contractor tells us that they're going to make it, yet let's say more than half of the activities get pushed into the next week, that creates a bow wave of activities that just at some point cannot get done in time. So those are the facts. But they reiterate that, and before the meeting, I was asked if there's LDs. Yes, there's LDs on the project, and we can go into that further. Pending scope changes are minimal, as they're just things that we have seen that we would like to upgrade within the project. We've necked that down to almost minimal stuff now. The scope changes we have going on right now are a different water meter sizing request to meter the water from AWW. And we have a need to add some additional conduit runs so that we can control the old plant 2 from the new plant 2A and in a future date. Change order statuses, we haven't met at this level for a couple months, at the enterprise level for a couple months, and I believe change order 9 is what has been executed and approved since then. I think the last meeting was November. Again, $90,000 in miscellaneous improvements, overhead door changes, and design revisions to the sewer line. If I could take us to the table, the financial report. If we remember that in starting January of 2015, we inserted the middle column projecting what we see the contracts ending up at project completion. This has been updated as of this meeting in January of 16 here. We see Quanta contract actually going down, which the explanation there is that we are deleting out of the contract the full $3.5 million of spare parts that we asked them to quote us. We don't think it's wise to buy them at this time, or the discount that they were offering did not warrant that it's wise to buy them now. So we're debiting that out. GE is tracking. The major equipment is here, and we're just paying for labor, GE labor, to technically direct the startup of the turbines. IEC is tracking closely. This is the owner's oversight in engineering, technical support, builder's risk, no change. MLP Finance has tightened up the AFUDC interest during construction and anticipates it being $10 million or so, and that continues to be a high point. Mark can speak to that further as to why. A&G is tracking, other expenses is tracking, and our infrastructure projects, the litany of periphery projects to the MLP or other contractors are doing to plug in this project to the rest of MLP is tracking well below budget. We think that we will finish the project well below $290 million on a 314 budget. The next two charts are, the first one is the budget to actuals, or the projected to actuals all within the Quanta. We are in this phase that I spoke to last year where winter, spring of 16, there's not much billing because they would be doing startup activities. And I expect the billing to be at the $4 to $6 million level going forward this spring. This is a indication of that construction really is still going on when the contractor would like to be doing startup activities. And then the second chart is the grand chart showing that the project is tracking well under the overall projected budget. And it's very granular at this point and doesn't tell us that much, but it's just showing at this point the history of the billing against the projected. And my report concludes with pictures of the construction.
If I may, just a couple while I have it in my mind here. The connection to Plant 2, was that an add-on in terms of the controls, the electric controls?
It was and is. At the time of going to contract, we had not decided how we're going to control our legacy plants. And we have a solution now outside of this project. And while we're building, we said, let's get our path to where we want to interface with Plant 2 so that we can control the old plant from the new control room. And
But that saves you labor going forward.
the real savings will be down the road when we remote control Plant 1 in the same control system. And that will require some negotiation with the union, but we would like to control our legacy and peaking plant from the new facility.
Dick, did you have something?
No, it sounds
Okay,
reasonable.
All right, go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question? Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Can you guys hear me okay?
No, but that's all right.
Oh, hang on, can you hear me better now?
Yeah,
Okay,
sort
so,
of.
I'm gonna preface this by saying that I have been absolutely,
I can't hear you, Amy.
confident. You can't hear me?
Amy?
Okay, I'll just hold.
Can we turn
I'll
that?
just hold my It's okay.
Ask her if she'll call my cell phone, Rose.
If you call Dick's cell phone, he can put you on a speaker. Maybe better.
You can't hear me now?
Oh, wait. We hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I was just going to say that I want to start by saying that I have complete confidence in Mark and Eugene, to do this project successfully. I just want a very direct answer, and I'll tell you where it's coming from. I've been getting some phone calls from people working on the project telling me they have major concerns about certain issues with engineering and this timeline and the schedule. I'm not sure what they're talking about yet. I've scheduled a couple of meetings. Are you aware of any concerns that maybe you're saying in technical speak that I'm not picking up on, that we should just kind of keep in our back pocket?
Well, Amy, this is Mark. I believe that Eugene alluded to it, that we have had concerns for some time related to the schedule, and we have expressed those concerns both verbally, in writing to the contractor, that we see that there are tasks that we would think would have been completed by now that are slipping, and
Sure.
they have continued to assure us that they will finish on time with the schedule that they have put forward.
Okay, yeah, and that's kind of what I was picking up from what he was saying. Mark, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm going to put you on mute after I ask my last question, and then I'll be done. So I'll let you finish your thought on that, but I also want you to touch on, are you having any concerns specifically with any of the engineering or any of the actual work that's being done that might pose a problem in the future? And then I'll just stop there and I'll just listen.
Well, I think that we have had, I will say, a challenge with the engineering firm that they selected. And as a result, one of the things that you'll note in the budget is that the cost related to the IEC contract has increased over what we anticipated it would be. And part of what they do for us is they are sitting there, they're reviewing the information that comes from the construction company as well as from their engineering. And we have required in a number of cases them to go back and do things over because we felt that they did not comply with the terms of the contract. And we are satisfied that the folks at IEC, with their many, many, many years of experience, are able to ensure that the project is done to the contract that we negotiated. In addition to that, we have ML&P individuals on site that are reviewing a number of pieces of it and making sure that the work is done in a manner that will provide us a long-term product that works the way that we want it to. And wherever possible, if we see something that isn't that way, we are noting that with the contractor and having them, one, address the issue as to why it will meet the standard, or fix it if necessary.
And,
Wonderful.
and
Wonderful. I appreciate it very much.
I'd just like to add on that to what Mark is saying, that the stress level is very high to extreme. IEC is earning their money. There is issues with engineering. We keep telling them to revise and change. And some of the stories we're hearing from labor in the field is they're not getting good direction, and that's a contractor-labor relationship, or they see things that should be something different, and they bring it up, and feel like they're not being addressed from the boots on the ground level. Now, IEC, we have a list quite deep that we are having them address, and they are working hard to keep the quality where it needs to be.
That's helpful. Thank you very much, you guys, for that candid response. And I just want to reiterate, I have 100% faith and confidence in Eugene's abilities and Mark's leadership. And I just want to reiterate one more time that I really appreciate the candor and the ability to have this open conversation. We just don't want to get caught down the road. And, even though you're telling it to us in technical speak, we missed it. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Jennifer?
If I remember correctly, this contract was a time-certain contract, and the contractors are responsible for any overruns as far as time. Is that correct?
That is correct. If they don't meet the time frame that was specified in the contract, there are damages that they are subject to.
And then also, same as far as any engineering issues or any, because they're project managers, and even though we have our own folks supervising the project managers, we are covered on that end too, correct?
The specs of the contract are very detailed, and that's why we have IEC working to hold them to those specs. And if they are not doing something as it is required by the contract, we are making them make it right so that it does meet the requirements of the contract.
And so as far as loss for the municipality, if we end up taking longer than, or they end up taking longer than we would prefer, our risk and our liability is more on our financing, as far as the time sensitive, as far as interest rates and how we eventually finance the project, would you say?
I would say that with to date, the financing that we have and the savings that we've had, even if the project goes slightly longer than was anticipated, if it goes a couple of months beyond that, the amount that we anticipated that we would pay for the financing and the amount that we will actually pay it's about a third. If you look at the line on the report, the AFUDC, we estimated it would be $28 million. We're currently at about $11 million.
And we did a hybrid, didn't we, with ML&P, or did we just do straight, are they commercial papers?
We did commercial paper and working with public finance, and on that, our costs are about 1%. And we then, late last year, did a bond issue, and we rolled about $185 million of commercial paper into long-term debts, which the effective rate, I believe, was less than 4%. I believe it was about 3.88%. And because the market was starved for municipal bonds, we got a significant premium on the bonds that we issued.
And we might, we'll see, I mean, that'd be the only thing that we're sort of in this never land. I don't think interest rates are gonna be rising. We don't look at it right now, but we have that's the only time sensitive, well, besides having an up and running plant.
But even if there was a 30 or 60-day delay, it would not affect our financing plan as it stands right now.
And are you looking at, probably it's premature, but looking at bonding or looking at hybrids? What do you?
We would look to, we currently, after we rolled off the $185 million on the commercial paper, we have continued then to build up as we've made payments. So we're still using that commercial paper program. That will build until we get close to the end, and then we will look at that point of rolling that into longer-term bonds that would be paid back over the life of the plant.
Because I think at one point, actually, there was a point where commercial papers were less expensive than long-term bonds, but you'll go through.
And they are.
Yeah.
The actual
That's why I was
interest
wondering
on the
about a
commercial
hybrid.
paper is about 8 to 10 basis points.
Right.
But when you add in the fees, it comes to about 1%. And you're right, it is cheaper. But over the long term, if you wanted to carry that for
Right.
30 years,
You have to be watching.
probably not wise, because it might
Changes.
change significantly, and then you're in a bad spot of having to try and roll
No,
it
you'd have to
that
be on top of it. You'd have to, I mean, if you're gonna get the savings from the commercial papers, you'd have to be watching the market closely so that you could do the bonding once that flipped.
And as you mentioned, the forecast into the future is that long-term rates will increase. So we can.
It was more certain probably a month and a half ago than it is now.
And so we hope to roll that in and capture the low rates that currently exist before those rates start to move next year.
Mark, are you guys confident that IGC is doing their job well and they're catching the items that they need to catch?
IEC, yeah,
Yeah. What did I say?
I am.
IEC, yeah.
I am. The team I have in place in front of us representing the municipality is a first-class team. They exceed at working with small utilities. My construction manager built the Alyeska pipeline terminal. He's been building stuff for 50 years. This is his last job. You know, he's a relatively small Lego project in terms of putting a facility together. He is saying that this contractor is difficult, and so he's rolling up his sleeves a little further than he would like to lead the horse to water, if you will.
Were they the same folks that were involved in the design process originally, or the selection, I guess, the selection process? I remember you had a group in there that were
Yes.
mulling over the plans.
Yes, they were. They helped develop the
Yeah.
site, the concept, and the technical specs that we're now holding the contractor to. They didn't choose the contractor. That was MOA employees.
Is there a list of the IGs or of the items that they've presented or you presented to the contractor to solve the issues?
Yes, we're tracking
And is that something that would make sense to us or be of
At
value?
least you make us understand it.
Yeah.
I would probably say no. There's a
Yeah.
punch list quite deep and
Yeah.
detailed. So, I mean, some of them are fit and finish, and they're or things are organized by criticality. And
Yeah.
That pipe has to move, or because this, that, or the other reason, or this doesn't look right. Please repaint it. Or, so
Yeah.
it's everything in between, and it's a process that happens in every large construction project. It's I guess what I would say is,
Standard operating
It's
procedure.
standard.
Contract, yeah.
and I will say that the contractor this is my opinion, is behind, and and doesn't want to deal with this stuff right now. Punch list, they will deal with it later. You know, and that's, I can see that argument.
Well, you're gonna tell us about a potential conflict, I guess, with contracting with the overages or underages, and I presume it has something to do with, are there things on that list that they just say, no, that wasn't part of the contract, we're not doing that, or?
That's the nature of negotiating or interpretation of a spec, and they say no, we say yes, okay, it goes over here into a bucket.
And then you argue over
Yes,
cost.
over the
who's
value of
paying
it.
what.
Right.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think that that's the end of the report, and as Amy mentioned, we have tried to be candid, and in that spirit of candor, we want to report that for the last several months, there have been suggestions by the contractor that there were issues that were caused by AWU that have made their life difficult and that they believe were outside the bounds of the contract. We have worked with them to try and resolve those and get a better understanding of what their specific issues are. They indicated that they might at some point in the future file a claim for those issues. We have asked them repeatedly, you know, if you're going to do that, please do that so that we know exactly what your position is. They finally did that, and they have given us a claim for issues related to what they see as project difficulties caused by AWU and the requirements that they put on them related to piping and the water systems there. We believe that that their claim, it does not have basis. Well, I guess I should say that while there may be some basis for it, we believe that their claim is far exaggerated from reality. There is an administrative process within the contract that allows us to attempt to solve this at the project level. And if we are unable to do that, then to move it to what is referred to as the principal level, so myself and the person from Quanta, and if necessary, we can have the option of mediation, or if we have to, take it to legal action.
Binding mediation, just.
There is nothing within the contract that requires us to go to mediation or arbitration, but if we were wanting to do that as a way to try and solve the issue amicably, we could do that. We believe that that it is something that we can resolve without litigation. However, because of some of the intricacies of the claim, we think that it's not something that we should discuss in a public forum, because there is the potential for litigation related to this if we're not able to resolve it. We think that it ties into their problems with schedule, and that they believe that part of this is what caused some of those problems with schedule. We disagree with that. But they have given us the claim, and we now have 30 days to respond. We are working with the municipal attorney's office. We are working with purchasing and with IEC to address the issues and find the best way to try and solve those issues. And with that, I will.
Let me go with Jennifer, and then Dick has a question.
I'm just looking to see as far as scope changes. Did we have multiple scope changes as far as the wastewater with AWW?
We did not, in our opinion. Their issue goes more to the requirements that AWU has, that these are requirements that they require any contractor working within the municipality to meet. And we believe that the contractor failed to understand the process and how long it was going to take, and didn't do things on the time schedule that they probably should have, in our opinion. And as a result, they had to go through various iterations of providing them with drawings and engineering that was subsequently questioned by AWU and then came back to the contractor.
So it was nothing as far as, in your opinion, of massive scope changes or saying, oh, but this, oh, but that. It was something where if due diligence was done at the front end, it would have been all very apparent.
We believe that to be the case. It wasn't that, we said, okay, well, we're gonna put the pipe here, and then, they start to dig the trench, and then we said, well, actually, we would like it over there.
So, yeah, or just, no, we really meant this size, not that size. And
Right.
that-
There were issues early on regarding the type of pipe that was used. It was something that had not been utilized here within the state. And as a result of that, we think they should have been more proactive in getting AWU to try to understand what it was and that it did in fact meet the specifications, because they finally did accept that. But the process
So
could
the
have been more
communication-
proactive.
The communication was.
Yes, the
Was
communication.
it the preheating of the water? Was that a part of the issue? Wasn't there a change coming out of plant 2 or something like that in terms of preheating the water for AWU? That was kind of an add-on?
That was not a change. That was
Okay.
always anticipated within the agreement.
Okay.
Now, specifically, I think the contractor will argue that the specifics related to it were an issue.
Okay.
What type of claim are we talking about?
$7.5 million.
7.5? Thank you.
That's the stated claim.
Now, within that $7.5 million is a significant amount of profit. If you take the profit out of it, it's probably
5.
half.
Or is it less than 5?
It's less than half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Less than half when you take profit out of it?
Yes. So their actual cost, damages that they incurred as a result of it, were much less than what they are claiming.
So I guess we jumped into that other topic.
So we think that this is that sort of second issue that we said we wanted to brief you on today. It's why this is a timely meeting and to give the committee an update on this. It probably still has, there's probably another 30 to 60 days of the processing that Mark has described. We are only maybe not even halfway through our review of the claim. We'll make a response, which I would imagine will be to challenge most, if not all, of the items in the claim. And then that will lead to the project level and then the executive level reviews that will go on. That'll take another 30 plus days. In the meantime, we are taking steps to secure counsel so that we are doing the preparatory work at this stage of the process in case there is a litigation component to this. Bill Falsey and his team are well aware of this and have been since the claim was received. And I believe Bill is planning to use outside counsel
Yes.
to support this case.
And so at some point you will see a request come before you to,
A recommendation of award if it triggers the assembly approval levels.
What you have from them is a demand for payment. I mean, it's.
It's a
They
claim.
want the money now. It's not, we'll work it out at the end. It's at that point. They've done the work and therefore.
they believe
Pay for
that,
it.
that they are due this money, yes.
That they've already incurred this cost. Because it was mostly related to the design early on, or early-ish on in the project.
They didn't bid on that. I mean, it was an after the fact design or?
No, they bid on it. We believe that they probably, not having worked
Didn't
in
understand.
Alaska,
Okay.
didn't understand, what they should have done. Had they done the process as we encouraged them to do, we think that this would not have happened.
Amy, do you have anything?
Mr. Chair, yes, just one comment. If in fact the award for outside counsel does come before the assembly, I just request an executive session so we can delve a little deeper into the details. So not only the enterprise committee can understand, but the assembly as a whole can understand. I think information ahead of time is helpful. That's all.
No, and that would be our hope. And when I said bring it before you, bring it before the assembly, and we would request executive session to be able to fully brief you, provide all of the details that we would not want to do in a public session, so that you had as much information as possible before making the decision on getting outside counsel.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you, Mark.
Other questions? Anyway, thank you for bringing us up to speed on that. I enjoy the candor. I'm glad we're doing it the way we're doing it. Anything else on
Well,
that topic?
We were going to give you a little bit of information on BRU, or
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
we're done with 2A unless there's further questions on that.
We'll see.
Um,
Yeah.
The only, you're aware, based on the report we made recently, that we have signed the purchase and sale agreement as authorized by the Assembly to acquire an additional interest in the Beluga River unit. We have a partner, Chugach Electric. All of the substantive terms of the PSA are consistent with what we described to the Assembly late last year during the early phases of our process. There's been no significant changes to any of those terms or any of the information that we gleaned. We did complete the due diligence work that we described to you. We used 3 separate contractors to evaluate the environmental condition of the field, the condition of the facilities in the field, and to do a second review of the subsurface resources at the field. All 3 of those separate contracts, they were all with different vendors. All 3 of those confirmed what we had thought to be the case. We didn't identify any significant additional risk associated with the condition of the facilities, with the environmental conditions on the field, and the subsurface evaluation generally confirmed what PRA had told us in our initial evaluation of the subsurface resource. And as a result of that, we moved forward with the purchase and sale agreement on the terms that we described to you all and that have been discussed publicly for the last week or so. So that we moved forward with that. There are some next steps coming up. The final agreement is essentially the closing of the deal is contingent on RCA approval. So the next major piece of this process will be securing that RCA approval. And for us, it'll be sort of a 2-part, and Mark, jump in here if I miss this. We'll be seeking the approval of the acquisition in concert with Chugach Electric. It'll essentially be a joint filing on that basic issue. But then separately, we will ask the RCA for permission to use the funds that are in the DRLGS,
Deferred regulatory liability from gas sales.
what he said, which is a source of funding that is close to $100 million, which would almost be enough to fund the entire municipal expense associated with the acquisition. That, in addition to the underlift and other sources, would essentially give us the opportunity to pay primarily cash, if you will, for our share of the acquisition. As an alternative, if for whatever reason, and there's a long conversation that we can have with you on the merits of that and the regulatory pros and cons of that, and why the RCA might say yes or might say no. But in the alternative, we would come back to the Assembly seeking permission to issue debt, revenue debt, for the acquisition. And there might end up being a hybrid of the 2 funding streams as well. So That is work that'll be going on over the next 2 to 3 months. We'll be submitting to the RCA
Within the next 2 weeks.
by the end of the month. We're asking for an expedited review. We might get it. We might get partial expedited review. So they might say yes to the acquisition, but not opine immediately on the funding stream. All of that will be worked through, and we'll keep the assembly through the committee or through whatever process the assembly wishes up to speed on all of that. But under any of those funding alternatives, we still believe the deal is by far in the best interest of the utility and of the municipality generally. We have a preference on the financing mechanism, but not one that would make the deal ultimately unattractive to the municipality.
Is there any rate increase request going forward or need for one? Or is this, or rate reduction or anything in that regard?
Related to this transaction, what customers would see would be a
Price
rate
review.
reduction in the gas component of their bill, because we would be able to provide the gas at a lower cost than if we have to go out and buy that gas.
And do we have to ask for that change? Or is that a change that they expect us to make on a
We do not have to ask for that. What we
Okay.
need, as Mike said, is we need their approval to
complete
buy it.
Yeah.
And then once they give us approval to buy it, then we have to get their approval on how we determine what the price of each MCF that gets passed through is. And once they give us that approval, then it automatically flows through our cost of power adjustment, which is an everyday thing.
No.
The contract with Hillcorp in terms of, or with management company, I presume we've had the discussion. Have we signed anything in that regard, or?
Yes. We have committed to, as a part of the purchase and sale agreement,
Okay.
we identified that Hillcorp would be the operator of the field once the transaction with Conoco is complete. So Conoco will operate up through closing, and at that point, Hillcorp will take over. There could be some adjustment between Hillcorp and Conoco to have that happen a little sooner or a little later, but that's the anticipated timeline.
And they are currently working with Conoco and Hillcorp, working together. They've had a number of meetings to take care of transfer of permits, state requirements related to operating the field. And that process is ongoing, and it's somewhat a formality. It just takes a little bit of time, so that's why they have started now.
Is the submission to RCA a joint submission between us and Chugach?
Yes, it will have the two components, and the component to buy it will be a joint submission. The component whereby how we value the gas that we put through, that will be separate, because Chugach will have a different mechanism than we do, because they are going to finance theirs with debt, and as Mike said, we hope to finance ours by paying cash.
Jennifer, anything?
No,
Amy, anything?